My name's Cam, and I'm in a group with Jax and Carlos. Our idea for a screenplay is a movie called Rat Tunnels. Basically, the long line of this movie is it's about a Vietnam American soldier. He gets lost in a Vietnamese underground tunnel and experiences hallucinations while trying to escape. First act starts out with, the two main characters, first of all, are introduced in the first act, and it's the main character, Rusty Anderson, and then the other guy, Teddy Dawson. Act one is where Teddy and Rusty, they're childhood friends. They're both like 18, 19, right out of high school. They're going to Vietnam because they got nothing else to do. To the base, they arrive in Vietnam right after basic training, put into a squad, and then, they start patrolling. As they're patrolling, they come across these two Vietnamese rice farmers. Not sure what to do, and the squad leader tells them to kill him. Rusty's kind of conflicted about this, but he follows orders anyways. So as time goes on, as they keep patrolling, they come across. When they come across, well, it gets night, and then they set up camp. While they're, getting ready to go to sleep, Teddy hears a noise, and he wakes Rusty up, and he's like, "Hey, I think I see somebody." And they go out looking for the guy who they think they see. End up stepping over like a trap, fall down into a tunnel, and Teddy falls first, and then Rusty falls on top of him, breaking all for Rusty. Teddy snaps his neck and dies, and Rusty survives. But the audience and Rusty don't know that Teddy dies. They don't know that yet. Where the second act starts, Rusty wakes up. He does not know that Teddy is dead at this point, and he hears Teddy's voice on his like side radio saying, "Hey, I made it out, Rusty. I'll tell you how to get out of the way. Just follow my orders." And he's like, "Okay, cool." Flashlight and he's 1911. He starts making through the tunnel. He comes across booby traps. Soldiers he has to kill, all that stuff. Going on, he meets this little Vietnamese kid, and they both draw their weapon at each other. He's conflicted because he's just a kid, and he hasn't really experienced the true horrors of war, so he doesn't want to kill the kid right off the bat. Make a bond. They don't really speak their language that much, but they figure out that his name's Rusty and the kid's name is Lau. And as they're going through it. Teddy is talking to Rusty through the radio, saying, "Hey, I don't trust this Lau kid. I don't trust him. I don't trust him." Rusty ignores him because he's just a kid. As they're going through, they stumble across. They keep stumbling across like enemies they have to kill, booby traps and whatnot. And the third act starts eventually after they come across more conflict and whatnot. The third act starts when they enter this room, and it looks like it's like a control center. They got like there's like planning boards on the wall. There's like tables, like chairs, kind of disarrayed, papers everywhere. The room at the end has been like collapsed, but there's like a bright light shining through like the holes in like the rubble, and there's like a small enough gap where it looks like a child could fit through. So Rusty thinks, hey, maybe I could send Loud through there and he could find help or like find a way to get us both out. But before he could ask Lau if he could shimmy through the rubble, he hears Teddy's voice again saying, "Hey, don't let that kid out of your sight. It's going to be the death of all of us." And then Rusty turns to the radio and he's like, "What do you mean, Ted?" But before Ted could answer, Lau starts pointing to the hole and he like starts shimming through it. And Rusty's just like, "Well, I guess I gotta trust him, that he's gonna come back and save me." So while he's waiting for Lau, Rusty lights a cigarette, turns on his radio, and he's like, "Hey, Eddie, I think I'm finally gonna make it out of here. I'm gonna make it out of here alive." And then there's silence. There's no reply. "Eddie, you there, man? You hear me?" Still silence. Nothing. He starts hitting the radio. He's like, "Yeah, what's wrong with this piece of shit?" And all of a sudden, there's like a big crackle and pop, and like he starts hearing other voices from his squad members. He's like, "Hey, is that you, John? Is that you, Steve?" But there's no reply, and then he starts hearing more and more voices from his squad members, and they're like voices of scream, voices of laughter. And he's like, "Yo, what's going on? What's going on? You guys all right?" And then all the voices start like blending into like one like loud white noise, and it's like deafening. Like he like closes his the cigarette drops out of his mouth that he's smoking, and he clenches his head, covering his ears because the noise is getting so piercing. And then his head starts to spin. He starts getting dizzy, and then he starts hallucinating. He sees like Teddy in the corner with like his broken neck, saying, "You shouldn't have trusted him. You shouldn't have trusted him." And then he says his other squad members like burned from like napalm. His squad leader like shot up. Another one with his throat slit. And he starts like spinning and spinning and spinning. And right before he thinks he's gonna like lose his mind, a loud explosion happens, and all the voices and all the hallucinations stop. And then in the place where the rubble was, it's just Lau standing there with a bright light shining through the tunnel. Both Lau and Rusty, they run up, they escape the tunnel alive, and Rusty's like, "Oh my god, we finally made it out alive." Then he looks at Lau and he's like, "We finally made it, but Lau's gone. He's nowhere to be seen." Confused, Rusty looks around thinking like, where did Lau go?" And all he sees is like this smoke rising from like these trees, and he thinks that's where his camp is. So he turns to his radio. He's like, guys, I see smoke. Are you guys all right?" But there's no answer again. And then he looks at his radio, turns it around, and he figures out there's no batteries. And then he remembers he never replaced the batteries from last night's patrol. So he's thinking, hey, how could I hear those voices? What happened? What's with those hallucinations? Who did I see? What's wrong? Why does my radio not have batteries, even though I heard them? So he's looking around more confused. And then he sees a sign that says, "Caution, chemical war testing plant. Keep out." And this like gray green smoke starts to like waft up from where the rat tunnel was. All of a sudden he understands. He's hallucinating, hearing voices the whole time. Those people he's and the squad members he saw in the rat tunnel with their like throat slits burned up, shot to death, necks broken, those were actually his dead squad members. We kind of, I mean, and then it just like kind of pans up to like the jungle area above him, and then the movie ends. And this is where we want to leave up to interpretation. Like, do we, was Lau real? Was he just hallucination? Did he like rat out the squad members? Was he just some innocent little kid? You know, it's like unsure. We want to leave that up to the audience to figure out. Yeah, but in conclusion, the enticing incident of this story or this film was when Rusty falls in a rat tunnel. The midpoint is when Rusty must work with Lau to get out. The climax is when Rusty must trust Lau to crawl through the gap to save him. And the resolution is when Rusty makes it out but finds out he was hallucinating from a chemical gas, and the voices he heard and the people he saw weren't real, and his squad members were dead the whole time. It's kind of dark ending, but, it's kind of like a horror story, a horror war story. But I hope you enjoyed listening to this. I know I really did enjoy working on this.